I think if you're Boots, you can't be thinking about mega fights. Right now, he really hasn't been in a good to really good fight yet.
They were thirsty for blood. You could sense it. They wanted that highlight reel knockout, and they didn't get it. It was retirement between rounds. Can he beat Boots?
No, he cannot beat Boots.
Bam is the kind of fighter that rises to the occasion and then can be kind of indifferent to the occasion.
I think if you're Bam, you get away with stinking it out and then running back.
There's a lot of Mexicans in the Philadelphia area, and they come out, they drink, and they want to see, mano a mano. They want to see a war. They want to see Mexican style.
The Roundtable team have been assembled again as we look forward to a big fight card November 9th from the Wells Fargo Center. Two of the best fighters in the world on that card, Jesse Bam Rodriguez and Jaron Ennis. Let's discuss it. Todd Grisham, Barry Jones, Chris Mannix here. What do you guys first think, before we get into the fights itself, about two of these fighters being together on the same card? We don't normally get that.
I think it's great that you get two main event level fighters on the same card. I think it's one way to make this card more interesting than outwardly it would honestly appear. Because you do have a main event with Boots Ennis going up against Karen Chukadzian, and it's the rematch that nobody asked for. Bam Rodriguez, look, he was out there waiting for Gallo Estrada. He thought that fight was going to happen. Guevara's out there as is mandatory. That's a fine mandatory title defense. But I think the card is strengthened by the fact that the two of them are on it together.
I feel like it's a buy one, get one free deal. You know what I mean? They're trying to entice you to watch this card because both guys are going to be heavy favorites. Both guys are expected to get knockouts. So I think it's kind of a, hey, look, this one's going to be an okay fight. This is going to be an okay fight. But they're two future superstars. Bam's probably won already. On the same card on the same night, it makes it a much more, I got to see this card.
And Bam, because Bam's done selling so well in Phoenix on the West Coast, to take him on the East Coast, I think is quite good. So spreading him around so fans can see him in the flesh. With an opponent that, on paper, should make him look really good. Like, if he looks good against anybody, but I mean, he might highlight how good he really is. And also, Jaron Ennis in his last fight, he sold in Philadelphia to make his base there as well. Really start building at it as like a fortress. I think that makes it for an exciting night.
I almost feel like with Bam, look, we want to see Bam in high-level fights all the time, right? But Bam can give us a low-level-ish one because he's done so much already and he's sort of 24 years on earth, right? He's incredible. With Boots, Chris, I feel like there could be a problem here because I think by all of our sort of predictions, think he's the number one welterweight in the world, but the record books in terms of who he's fought suggest he can't get those fights. Eddie can't get him those fights. I know Eddie's just signed him, but do we have a problem in finding Boots the right opponents to take him to that next level?
Yeah, I mean, when you get to the level that Boots Ennis is on, where he's a world champion and a really dangerous guy, opponents out there are going to ask for a bag. That's what happened with the Brian Norman situation, where they wanted a pile of money if they were going to get in the ring with Boots. Same thing with Amonte Stanionis. Same thing with Mario Barrios. Like, these guys know that Eddie Hearn needs to make big fights for his star fighter, and they're going to demand the kind of cash accordingly.
The crowd in Philly last time, everyone was shocked it sold out, right? It was packed. The crowd was buzzing. The fight wasn't that exciting, and it ended on an anticlimactic note. They were thirsty for blood. You could sense it. They wanted that highlight reel knockout, and they didn't get it. It was retirement between rounds. And I'm afraid this fight is going to, if it looks like the first one, is going to stink the place out. And instead of growing his fan base, it could shrink it. So if he doesn't get a knockout here, I think it's really going to hurt his brand.
Yeah, and it's also important that, that he's shown so much promise and looked like the future, and it obviously is the future of the welterweight division, like the next star, after Crawford and Spence. But that he has to put on a good performance. The last performance against this guy, he should be more assertive. You take a little bit more extra risks. The great fighters do that. To blast out people like that. You can't coast in fights where people are below your level. You have to just get them out to there. That's just the harsh facts and the thing. So this fight, no, if he doesn't do it in this one, questions will be asked. It's still up for grabs. We think he's the best welterweight in the world, I think. But no one's really cemented that yet. If he can get that, there's no huge names in his weight now, really.
I was going to ask that. Sorry, Chris. I was going to say that. What's the super fight for him? Look, realistic. He's not going to fight Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford is not going to fight Boots unless it's ridiculous money and he takes it. Is it one of the big 140 guys coming up? Is it a Teofimo Lopez? Is that the fight he's looking for to grow that brand?
I don't think there's a super fight out there for him right now, because I don't think there's a super fight potential at 140 or at 154. Like, I think his bigger fights are going to come at 54. Look, he wants to be a unified champion before he moves up. So he wants to get one more title shot. I think Brian Norman is the most likely opponent out there. They got to to use a American football term, like the 20-yard line on those negotiations. So I think they can get over the line.
Wait, was it the 20-yard line on your own 20, or was it their 20 about score?
Red zone.
Okay,
they were in the red zone.
All right,
Again, we're just borrowing American football metaphors here. They were in the red zone on that point, so I think it can get
Is that
done.
like the penalty box in soccer for us?
No,
like,
we can't. No, we're not doing
Is
this.
it
We're not
penalty
doing
box?
it. I can't-
Stay in your own football league.
I can't even compare.
This is in Philadelphia. We're using American football terms.
I think if you're Boots, you can't be thinking about mega fights. You have to think about good fights. Right now, he really hasn't been in a good to really good fight yet. He has been in some decent fights, but he hasn't been in a title unification fight to this point. He hasn't been in a title fight at 154. He hasn't been in with someone like Virgil Ortiz, which I think is a super fight for him at some point down the line. He hasn't been in those types of fights. In this fight, though, against Chikadze, I think we're going to learn if Boots Ennis is learning, if he's growing.
Yeah.
When I watched that fight, the first fight against Chikadze, he didn't know how to cut the ring off. Like, he was following the guy around. That allowed Chikadze to go the full 12 rounds. This fight, he knows what the guy's going to do. He knows how he's going to fight. We're going to learn if Boots has grown his game to the point where he can cut that ring off and land the kind of punches that knock guys.
I think he's in the middle of that. He's a brilliant fighter, potentially, I think, because he has all the attributes: power, speed, control. But there's no rivals yet.
I guess if there's no rivals, and we've seen this in other divisions with fighters, you've then got to destroy what's in front of you.
You've got a Marvin Hagler.
Yeah, you've got to destroy them. So everyone knows, okay, you're clearly above that. We haven't seen him yet do that, have we?
Barry, let me ask you this. In that first fight, Boots won every single round, but he got caught with a lot of shots. Yeah. And it seemed to me he was picking up some bad habits. Obviously, he's going for the knockout. And I'm thinking if he was fighting someone of a more elite level, he'd be in some real trouble. Is this fight almost, I wouldn't say a trap fight for him, but a fight that will make him step back, especially if he fights the way he did in the first fight?
Yeah, I think, he got caught because it's not a guy of a higher level.
And he had no power.
You switch on a little bit more, I think, when you're in a more dangerous fight for you. But also, what Chris said, if he hasn't learned from his mistakes, and it's the same sort of performance, then criticism rains down on him. Whether that's right or wrong.
Especially in Philly.
Well, what you said as well, again, you want to build a fan base there, you want to build a fortress, but if the performance is underwhelming, I mean, we're sort of beating up on a guy here who's done nothing wrong.
Yeah, they were talking about him moving up and just not fighting this fight. They're like, it's ridiculous, we have to fight him again. Were you disappointed when you heard about this, or were you kind of hoping he would move up to a weight class for Boots?
Yes and no. I was disappointed when I heard the Brian Norman fight fell through.
Yeah.
Not because I thought Brian Norman was going to push him and beat him, but I just wanted, okay, let's start picking up the belts now. Let's start really going around the houses and getting these belts and becoming unified and then eventually going up, right? Because there's still work to do, 147 pounds. But with this, again, like Chris alluded to, we've seen it before. Nobody on planet Earth, not even Karen, was asking for this fight again. So to see it again is disappointing. But
no, Karen was asking for this fight. Karen went through the process to make this fight happen. Like, he was fighting those stupid IBF title eliminators that put you in a position to get this kind of opportunity. Look, and I don't blame him for it because he's probably getting paid like 6 times what he got paid for his last couple of fights. The real problem, which is a whole different conversation, is the sanctioning body that allows something like this to happen, that allows a guy that got his kicked over 12 rounds to fight a few low-level fights and be right back in position to be the mandatory challenger here. But Todd, to your question, like, they did kick the tires at 154. Like, they talked about a Charles Conwell fight. They talked about fights with other guys at 154. There just wasn't a big fight out there for him at 54. And right now, that belt is currency. Like, if you are a champion, you can do some things with it, right? Like, you can look and say, all right, Brian Norman, all right, Stanionis, all right, Barrios, it's 2025. Let's start fresh. Let's get into these negotiations, and let's make a unification fight happen. So the pathway to the biggest fights for Boots still involve him having that belt.
what's the biggest unification fight for him at 147? Like, biggest in terms of profile, biggest in terms of resume. What's the biggest
There
one?
isn't one, is there? I don't think.
Of Stanionis, of Barrios, of Brian Norman.
Barrios
what's the
is
biggest one?
probably the most sellable fight I would have thought of all of them. But there's not one. I mean, they're all good fighters, but no one's a massive name. I think he has to, like you said. I mean, if my thoughts had an American accent, it would be you. But I think he has to build his brand at 147. He has to build his brand at 147 to make him. Then the title doesn't define him. Then he can move up to 154 with a bargaining chip to get those bigger fights. That are, I mean, there's not massive names up there except for Crawford and Spence maybe if he carries on, but there are still fights, better fights in that division than in the welterweight division. For now, if you stay around for 12 months, the landscape can change dramatically, and someone else comes up and from super lightweight, and then and there's a big fight there. Teofimo Lopez, if he moves up in weight and shows it, he's brilliant. That's a brilliant fight. Devin Haney moves up, it's a brilliant fight. If they can get it made, all these fighters can move up potentially.
Yeah.
But right now, where he's at, he just has to be the guy who's just being destructive.
Destroying everyone.
I do like the Brian Norman fight. It's not a mega fight, and Brian Norman, quite frankly, has done nothing to warrant the kind of.
And there's a little juice. So, people like a little tension.
There is. Like Brian Norman's entire resume at this point is kicking the crap out of Giovanni Santillon in one fight. Like he's asking for a lot of money. I don't think he's earned at this point, and I think in his next fight he's not going to make a whole lot of money. But there's something about kind of two black fighters in the prime of their career fighting in Philadelphia. It would be a packed house. It would just be a great atmosphere. It would be a great American fight. And we haven't seen kind of like Spence versus Crawford. It's not that, of course. Nobody's comparing it to that. But I think it would have a lot of those same vibes if the fight took place in Philadelphia. Norman made it clear during the process that he was ready and willing to go to Philadelphia and have that kind of fight. I think the most juice is a unification fight between Norman and Boots.
I would love it if somehow, no matter who that opponent is next, they get that person in Philadelphia, you get that person in the ring to have a stare down, have something
The
to build
energy
off.
in that building.
The last thing you want is a kind of lackluster performance. We don't know who we're going to fight yet. We'll chase somebody around. Thanks for coming.
That's always interesting, actually. The performance could be really bad. As soon as you get someone in the ring after and you sell the fight, you must forget about the performance you've just seen and you already start to sell.
Like Fury and Tyson.
It happened with
Tyson and
Canelo
Usyk.
and when he fought Chavez, when he had Golovkin walk into the
Hit
ring.
the music like WWE.
That was literally a WWE type setup. He knew he was going to beat up on Julio Cesar Chavez. He knew it was going to be a bad fight. But to take the taste out of people's mouths, here comes Gennady Golovkin setting up your fight up next. I don't think that's going to happen, though, with Boots, because there's too many complicating factors with Brian Norman for that to happen.
But ultimately, he's got to put on a stellar performance in every time he fights. Like the pressure's on to create him as the superstar.
Is that possible, though, Barry, against this guy? I think Chikadzian might be good performance proof. Like, if he fights that way again, look, we can criticize Boots for not being able to cut the ring off and not being able to do certain things to get him out of there. But Chikadzian moved the entire fight. It was one of the worst fights
We need Sergio Mora here to tell us how great Chikadzian is. That's what we need.
But he is a good mover, and he's very technically very good, and he can cause you problems. But the athleticism...
How does he win?
Well, I think he. It goes to points, I think.
No, but he didn't win a round last time. So
Can
he beat Boots?
No, he cannot beat Boots. And so that's the you saw the absurdity of having the stupidness of having this fight again. It's a fight that there's only one winner. I think he has the power to hurt Boots. He's not technically better, not faster. He's not more athletic. There's nothing. He ticks no box over.
So if you were if you were the trainer in the corner and you're making the game plan, do you just say, all right, let's try and survive 12 rounds?
You feint, you frustrate Boots, and then when he overcommits, you punch in flurries and then get out of the way, and you got to keep trying to spin him and turn him. But Boots can box both stances, and he switches on the punches as well, which is sometimes dangerous, but also means you can cut the ring off easier. Because when you punch and you step with it, he's going to go this way. You've already blocked that off. So you got to, show patience either go at him and try and batter him in the early rounds. But if you know he's because you've been in the ring with him, if you know he's more clever than that, you can't do that. Take the patience with the first few rounds. Walk him down. Make that you get a 20-foot one ring, whatever it is, and you make it a 4-foot triangle. Yeah. So he can't escape. And he has the athleticism and the movement, especially off his punches, Ennis, to do that. He just got to quicken up his feet a little bit and be a little bit more assertive. And like all fighters do, take that little bit of an educated risk.
He's got a...
Wait. He turned in how does Boots lose to how does Boots win?
I'll tell you what, he's got a great stablemate that can probably help him with a mover in Andy Cruz, being in his gym. Like you can tell Andy during this whole sparring. And I saw you had Michael McKinson in training camp with him as well. Another guy that's going to move around. So he's got some good movers in that gym. Just one thing on Bam though. If there's a chance for an upset, I think it's there. I'm not predicting it, but I think it has a better chance of an upset there than in the Boots fight, because Bam is the kind of fighter that rises to the occasion and then can be kind of indifferent to the occasion. You go back to 2022 when he had that breakout year, fought Carlos Cuadras, rose to the occasion in that one. Fought Srisa Rungvisai, rose to the occasion in that one. Then they stuck him on that Canelo card against Israel Gonzalez. He didn't even want to be there. Like he's like, all right, whatever, I'm going to go through the motions. He got the win, but it was a relatively lackluster performance. This is the same type of opponent.
Elias Hernandez did the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah. He kind of has these sort of like, all right, I'm going to win, but I'm not going to look great. This is the same kind of opponent that's in front of him. Like, he was preparing for that rematch against Gallo Estrada, which would have had a lot of juice to it. You know, he would have had a chance to knock off another Mexican legend one more time, would have given him great momentum. Now he's got to take this mandatory title defense. It's not the unification fight that he was hoping for. This is one of those kind of like, let's see what kind of shape Bam comes in. Let's see what kind of mindset Bam comes in, because I think there could be a chance for that fight to get interesting.
But I also think, and I think it's a real valid point actually, because he has form for that. But I do think he's probably more comfortable now with his stature than he was then. Now, you believe your own hype, and so he should, because his hype is brilliant. If he just listens to me, he'll think he's the best fighter ever lived.
He's your favorite fighter, right?
I love him.
Between these two, I don't know who loves Bam the most. It's close.
But he's just trying to get free trips to the US. That's
I am. I'm really looking forward to Philadelphia. No, but and honestly, he's a beauty to watch. But I think he's more comfortable with that now. So he does. Even though you still believe your own hype, you digest it a bit more. You just think, I am good, and I think he has more confidence in and understanding that he has to rip through people.
You remember when was it Chocolatito and Triple G, where Chocolatito was constantly his co-main?
Yes,
was that
yeah.
For a while?
Yeah.
Maybe this becomes a nice little pairing where these guys can kind of pair up, and Boots is the opener, and I'm sorry, we're Bam's the opener, Boots is the closer. Maybe this could be some sort of pairing going forward.
I think Bam's already kind of
sells too many tickets in the West Coast, doesn't he?
Yeah, he needs the right opponent, right? Like, Bam in San Antonio doesn't sell a ton of tickets quite yet, but that was a big event he had in Arizona. I think he's probably pushed past that. Maybe on like a pay-per-view level card, I could see that if he fights like a Bud Crawford or something like that. But I think Bam has kind of pushed past that. Can we just also address the topic that I bring up every time I talk to Bam, which is how far away are we from the Inoue fight?
I'm so happy you said this, because I put this on my social media and I got absolutely hammered for it.
Yeah.
And I was like, 1 second, this is
You
it.
check the comments and I don't. That's
Okay, yeah. You like the block and mute button.
Stupid.
But I said this is it, and I asked the question: could Inoue come down one, and could Bam go up one, and that's it? But I've been told all the time Inoue's struggling at the weight, and he's going to move up. But that's the super fight. That's the one that just makes more sense. I mean, I hear idiots talking about Inoue fighting Tank, and I'm like, stop right now. It's Inoue. Bam is the fight of all fights.
I do think until Bam moves up to bantamweight, then that talk about that is just a fantasy fight. But if
he's so big, even at Superfly.
He's massive.
Have you seen him when he's not training?
It's
I mean, he looks
ridiculous.
like a doughboy. You can't even recognize him. But that's one of the greatest fighters in the world, and he just looks over there. He's 150 pounds.
Yeah, he's got a little bit of Ricky Hatton to him there.
Yeah, so I don't see
Have you,
why.
have you asked him about Inoue? Has anyone brought that up to him?
I asked him in the ring after the last fight. Thanks for watching. I asked him in the post-fight interview. And look, he said at that time it was still just a fantasy fight to the points that Barry made. He's at 115. He's trying to unify. Inoue's at 122. There's got to be a bridge there. He's got to get 218 pounds. But I think that pathway is there. Look, that Puma Martinez-Ioka rematch, that's going to happen in the next couple of months. The winner of that fight's a natural fight for Bam. Then you can become a 3-belt champion. Don't worry about the 4th belt, whatever. Then you move up to 118. And there's a lot of champions out there you could potentially face. A lot of guys you could bring over to the U.S. at reasonable money and fight for one of their titles. If Bam can become a champion at 118, and if Inoue stays at 122, which I think he's going to do for a little while, he's got the Sam Goodman fight coming up. Jack Medaliev's out there screaming at him to take him in a title defense. I think the end of 2025 is where the sweet spot is, where Bam Rodriguez is a 4-division world champion, and Inoue is the undisputed champion at 122, and they can meet at that weight.
And I think if Inoue moves up to feather 126, he can still go back down quickly. I think he might jump up to featherweight.
Yeah.
I don't think he's having the issues that you think. I think he's okay. Like, when I talk to top-ranked people, like, they say he's good. Like, he's fine here. Like, part of it of not moving to 126 is what do you do there? Like, what's interesting up there? Like, Top Rank is so desperate for Robeisy Ramirez to win this rematch.
I know they're desperate to make a Nick Bull Inoue fight. Yeah, they're desperate to make a Nick Bull Inoue fight on a Riyadh.
That would be fun. That would be a fun
yeah,
fight.
you take my
You know
money
what's
for
interesting
that
about this card? Like, we expect both guys to pretty much dominate, and there's not a lot on the line, so to speak, but there is so much on the line if both those guys go in there and stink it out. It's 12-round, boring fights. I think it's going to be terrible.
I think if you're Bam, you get away with stinking it out and then running back.
Yeah, but he does, like you said, he hasn't been really on the East Coast. I mean, there's a lot of Mexicans in the Philadelphia area. I think there's going to be a lot of Mexicans in that crowd, and they come out, they drink, and they want to see, mano a mano. They want to see a war. They want to see Mexican style. And if he delivers it to them, he's the opener like a comedian. You want the guy before you to go out there and kill, to warm the crowd up. That's what Boots wants. That's what the crowd wants, and that's what people watching on DAZN want.
I do think there's just more risk for Boots because, like, this fight is like in Hollywood, like seeing Geely and saying, let's make a sequel. right? Like that's what the first fight was.
Dated reference.
It was that was the
went
worst
over
Waterworld.
movie.
How about
Worst
Waterworld?
reference
That's even more dated. That's even before that. What are you talking about? That was a 90s movie. But this is like seeing a Hollywood bomb and then saying, you know what, let's pour money into a sequel. That's the anticipation for this fight being awful is frankly at an all-time high. Boots Ennis needs to find a way to confound those expectations.
Remember Joshua Buatsi? You talked about how great he was, and now people are like, Joshua Buatsi.
But he's now right there in the
How
line.
exciting is he?
They're
Very.
very.
Did you not watch his last fight?
watched
it. That was a great-
Yeah,
It was
okay. Before
fantastic.
that, how many stinkers did he have where people are like, it's just kind of lost the mojo?
But-
Barry, am I wrong?
It's a little bit. but not fully.
He's my best friend.
No, you got a point though, because we're going off topic, but Buatsi always looks like he can do more. And always look, I think he's really good. And come at the Olympics, he looked like the one for me. He looked brilliant for British fighters, but he also looks like he can do a little bit more. There's more gears to go through. He just does enough all the time. That fight, he was pushed a bit more. We've seen better of him, but I think he's more again. I think the potential is so good for him. But going back to Ennis, he has American term. He has to do over this time, which is great. It's a great opportunity, but also can backfire if it's the same fight and the same result, and then people just go, oh.
My worry for Ennis, from the outside looking in, as a Brit that thinks he is that guy that's going to jump into the pound for pound rankings, is we just look at the resumes. We do it all the time. And I saw something the other day where someone was scoring his opponents through his resume, and it was a really low score. Like we need a super fight.
There isn't
You're going to get tired.
Well, it is-
You almost have to force one.
It's like Virgil beating Boachuk the way that he did was a step in that direction, right? Like that was a tremendous fight, maybe the fight of the year when it's all said and done. And Virgil's going to be in a position to elevate himself to full title holder, go for a full title sometime in the next 6 to 12 months. If he can do that, Virgil's starting to sell some tickets, become a crowd pleaser in Texas. Bam's building a fan base in Philadelphia. That fight could be not super fight, but that could be like close
That's a
to
good
pay-per-view
fight.
worthy
Yeah,
when you
agreed.
get to
That's
the
a good
Two
fight.
big punches there as well.
That's a good
great
fight.
You talked about Eddie making the fight. We're in an era now where we're sitting right now in Saudi Arabia. These fights can be made because of money. So the fights, you're like, well, hey, these guys will probably avoid each other for a few years. That might happen. Now we can get the closest thing to a super fight. It can be made by money in Saudi Arabia.
I don't even think you need that. Like
I don't think it
to bring,
needs
like that to me.
push.
That has to be an American fight, right? Like that. You have to
right,
have
Riyadh season in America.
Right,
I'm just
well,
saying
yeah.
the
Yeah.
money is there to make these fights that a couple
And I
months
think those
ago.
guys,
they
like those guys, make good money. They're not. I don't think they need outlandish money to make that fight. I think both guys really want it. Like both these guys are kind of craving that big event. Boots talks about it all the time. We've been around Virgil a lot. He talks about it all the time. Like I think once they're at 154, and once the timing is right, which I think we're barreling towards that, I think that fight's pretty easy to make.
But it's quite important to remember, I think with Ennis, he's won this world title when he's outgrown the weight, I think, as well. So
How he rehydrates within that 10-pound IBF limit is beyond me. He's massive, and he makes that IBF limit every single time. It's incredible.
crazy. And but I think that might detract from his performances. That might be an issue.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think his performance has been really bad, but that, I think he's a real star. But
That's why he wants unification fights, right? That IBF
yeah,
clause
he
goes out the
wants it
window.
quick because he can't move up. But he needs that because he's not a huge name yet. He needs that, those defenses, like that resume, to give him that gravitas to move up, to really warrant people to say, yeah, we want to see that fight.
The only positive I take away from this fight being made is it keeps Boots active. Like you talked about kind of the amount of times he got hit in that last fight. I think some of that was inactivity. Like he had been off for about a year since that. Now he's coming back just a few months. He's getting some of his rhythm back, staying in the gym, getting a little bit of that mojo back. I think you're going to see a much better version of him than you saw in that fight against Avanesian.
At the top, we'll wrap in a minute. At the top, very quickly, I said Boots versus Crawford isn't going to happen, right? He's not going to get that super fight. Is it impossible? Could that not happen?
Well, Crawford talks about maybe retiring. I mean, if he doesn't get Canelo.
Canelo or bust.
I think so. I do.
That's always been my read from Crawford's camp, that it is Canelo.
I mean,
or
how much
bust.
did he?
Like,
You may not know this. How much did he make for his last fight, Terrence Crawford, roughly?
I don't know that. He was around $25 million though for Errol Spence.
So
for
what's the motivation to get in there against Boots? Really,
there's not like it. It is
like-
money.
it's
Yeah,
like
he's not gonna
Canelo.
make- he's not gonna
Canelo's
make
like, what do
25.
I get by fighting this guy? What does Crawford earn by?
Look, he
fighting
said.
this
Look,
guy?
he even said to me in the ring right after when I asked him about why he wants that Canelo fight. It's like it's not so much that I want it. It's like there's a payday that comes with it. It's a nice check that comes along with it. That's the only fight out there that generates the kind of revenue that can get Terrence Crawford kind of out of bed and back in the gym and get ready for a big fight. I know Teofimo's out there trying to make something happen. You know, Virgil is out there probably trying to make something happen. But the only guy I think that can get Terrence Crawford back in the ring is going to be Canelo Alvarez.
All right, there you go. And by the way, this isn't just a case of Bam and Boots. There are some other good names on the card.
Khalil Coe!
Khalil Coe, unbeaten light heavyweight, is on the card. Really Raymond Ford moving up to super featherweight.
Love that.
Good to see Raymond Ford in action.
Not to
Ammo
kill
Williams
himself.
on the card as well. Ammo, who hasn't fought since Hamza Shira, so it is a really, really good card. November 9th, live on DAZN from the Wells Fargo Center. Make sure you tune in.